My name is Evelyn. I'm 29 years old. The morning my brother finally had to sit in a room and hear my version without talking over it, Austin looked polished enough to make me feel sick. I was parked across from a glass-walled venture capital office on Congress Avenue, sitting in my Corolla with a leather portfolio on the passenger seat and 11 unread texts from my brother glowing on my screen like tiny controlled fires. Outside, the city smelled like burnt espresso, wet concrete, air conditioning runoff, and the bright metallic edge of downtown traffic. Founders in clean sneakers kept sliding in and out of the lobby with laptop bags, pressed jackets, and that rehearsed, money-adjacent confidence people wear when they think the room is already leaning toward them. My brother had learned how to move like that. And that was part of the problem. He had not been the one with the original vision. He had just learned how to wear it in public. For 8 months, he had been speaking first. 8 months of telling investors I was confused. 8 months of telling people I was exhausted, emotional, blurring old drafts with new work. 8 months of letting the story get there before I did. He told one investor I was mixing up prototypes. He told our mother I was having another spiral. He told mutual friends I had attached myself to his company because my own freelance product work had stalled, and I needed something to make failure feel less personal. What he stole was not just a business concept. It was 2 years of my mind. 2 years of ugly notes and late rent and voice memos recorded at red lights because the ideas came faster than I could pull over. 2 years of sticky notes on my fridge, interface sketches on printer paper, and nights I fell asleep with my laptop open on my comforter and woke up with little keyboard squares pressed into my cheek. It was the one thing I had built that made me feel larger than my family's version of me. My phone buzzed again. "Graham, don't do this in there. You're upset. We can talk privately." I stared at it. Then another message dropped in. "Graham, please do not embarrass yourself." I laughed once, dry, sharp. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly him. Everything with Graham came wrapped in concern when witnesses might be nearby. He never said, "Don't do this to me." He said, "Don't do this to yourself." He made control sound like care. So often people stopped hearing the difference. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I pulled the portfolio into my lap and opened it one more time. Printouts, screenshots, notarized copies, old pitch drafts, Slack exports, domain purchase confirmations, invoices from the prototype designer I hired before he ever filed anything, a transcript of 3 voice notes I sent myself at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in February. Those voice notes were my favorite proof. You could hear the dryer thumping in the background. You could hear me half yawning while I said the core feature out loud months before he stood in front of a seed stage slide and called it his founder instinct. I had not come there to melt down. I had come there to restore sequence. But that mattered more than most people understand. When someone steals your work, they do not only take the thing itself, they rearrange time. They make you arrive second to your own life. They stand in front of your idea and keep explaining it until other people forget your fingerprints were ever there. I flipped to the top page. A screenshot of the first domain purchase. bridgeable.io. Bought on my debit card. My old South Lamar apartment address attached. Dated 4 months before Graham filed LLC paperwork under a different name and started telling people he had been incubating the concept quietly. Quietly. I remember seeing that word for the first time and feeling actual heat rise into my face. He had not incubated anything. He had hovered, he had asked questions. And he had offered to help shape the founder story. He had watched where the bones were, then built a prettier body around them, and told everyone it had been his from the start. I checked my face in the visor mirror. Minimal makeup, navy blouse, black trousers, low heels, hair pinned back. Not because I needed to look pretty, because women learn early that credibility gets graded through ridiculous filters. Too polished, and you are manipulative. Too tired, and you are unstable. Too angry, and you are irrational. Too calm, and they decide it could not have hurt that much. I took a sip of coffee from the console. It tasted like cinnamon and cardboard. A couple crossed in front of my hood holding hands and laughing at something on a phone screen. A delivery truck hissed at the curb behind me. Yet Austin kept moving like money, and humiliation were both ordinary weather. For 1 second I thought about driving away. Not dramatically, just cleanly. Putting the car in reverse, backing out, going home, feeding the cat, and letting him keep the stage. The thought came. Then it left. I looked down at the printed proof again and opened the door. The parking garage elevator smelled like cold metal and lemon cleaner. A man in a Patagonia vest stepped in beside me, nodded politely, and stared at the floor numbers. In the mirrored wall, I caught my reflection and had the strangest feeling I was walking toward the scene of a crash I had already survived. The 12th floor opened into a reception area so white it almost looked synthetic. A receptionist with a headset and bright coral nails asked for my name. Betty Evelyn Mercer. She checked a tablet. One moment. Her voice had that trained hospitality warmth that never actually lands anywhere human. Behind her, framed photos lined the wall. Founders grinning beside giant checks, ribbon cuttings, product launches, magazine covers, success arranged into a gallery. I found myself wondering how many of those smiles were wearing borrowed bones. Then I heard his laugh. I didn't need to turn all the way. Graham had two laughs. The public one was lower and slower, designed to make everyone else feel invited in. The private one, the real one, had a little blade in it. He came around the corner in a charcoal jacket, white t-shirt, expensive watch, and that same careful expression he wore at funerals, hospitals, and family conflicts, concern, arranged for witnesses. Yoev. Nobody called me that except family and men who underestimated me. His eyes flicked to the portfolio, then back to my face. I watched the calculation happen in real time. Can we talk for a second? No. He lowered his voice. You look really wound up. And you look overdressed for theft. His jaw ticked once. Please, he said. There are people here. That's the first good thing about today. He stepped closer. Not touching, not quite crowding, just enough to make it feel like he was still trying to manage my volume with his body. If you do this the way you're planning to, you'll hurt yourself. There it was. Always. Not an apology, not panic. Narration. He was still trying to narrate me. I looked past him through the frosted lower half of a glass conference room wall. Shapes moved behind it. Men in sport coats, a woman with a bright blue notebook, someone setting down sparkling water, somebody laughing once and then stopping. The investors were already there. I said, "You do not get to narrate me anymore." He held my gaze. "You're missing pieces." "No. You've been under a lot of stress." "So have you." I just didn't weaponize it. His face tightened. "We all know you've had a hard year. We all know." A family phrase. A phrase shaped like a hand over the mouth. 2 months earlier, I had stood in our mother's kitchen in Dallas beside a bowl of clementines and a curled Walmart receipt while she said it to me in that soft, pleading tone she used whenever she wanted facts to become mood. "Mom, nobody is saying you made it up." "Me, then what are you saying?" "Mom, I'm saying your mind gets intense when you're hurt." "In me, he stole my work." "Mom, Graham says you two brainstormed together." "Me, we did not brainstorm this together." "Mom, I just don't want you making a permanent mess out of temporary feelings." Temporary feelings. That was what months of gaslighting became in my family if you said it in a gentle enough voice. Graham glanced toward the conference room again. "Don't do this because you're angry." "I'm not here because I'm angry," I said. "I'm here because you lied to people with money." The receptionist went very still behind her desk, pretending not to hear a word. A junior associate passed carrying coffees, looked at us once, then carefully looked away. Graham tried again. What exactly do you think is going to happen? I think, I said, you're about to get asked the wrong questions. He gave me a sad little smile. That smile had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. At 16, when he backed Dad's truck into the mailbox and somehow made the gravel sound responsible. At 22, when he missed our grandmother's surgery because he was hungover, and by dinner she was apologizing for bad timing. At 28, when he borrowed $12,000 from our aunt for what he called a consulting gap, and what later turned out to be rent, lifestyle drift, and a canceled Tahoe trip. He was talented in real ways. Funny, fast, charming, good in rooms. He could walk into a party and know inside 5 minutes who needed to be admired, who wanted to feel smartest, and who wanted to feel specially chosen. That had once made him the best brother to have at a backyard barbecue. Later it made him dangerous. The conference room door opened. A woman with silver hoops and a camel blazer stepped out. Evelyn? I stood straighter. Yes. I'm Dana Klein. Her handshake was dry, steady, and entirely free of theater. I knew exactly who she was. I had memorized half her career 3 nights earlier while building my timeline. On a podcast last year, she had said, "Founders tell on themselves most clearly when facts get inconvenient." I had replayed that clip 3 times. She looked at me, then at Graham, then back at me. We're ready. The room was cold enough to tighten the skin on my arms. Pale oak table, floor-to-ceiling windows over downtown, a line of tiny succulents on the sill like decorative optimism. Pads and pens set in front of each chair. 5 investors, 1 junior associate, 1 legal counsel. Graham. Me. Dana sat at the head. This meeting is not part of our normal process, she said. But concerns were raised with enough specificity that we wanted relevant parties in one room. We're here to understand origin, authorship, timeline, and any representations made during diligence. Evelyn, you asked for the chance to speak directly. You'll have it. Graham leaned back slightly like a man trying to perform ease. Dana didn't look at him when she spoke again. You'll have a chance to respond, not while she's presenting. Is that clear? Of course, he said, smiling. I set the portfolio on the table. The leather made a soft worn sound when I opened it. My fingers didn't shake. That surprised me. There is a point in some humiliations where fear burns off and precision takes over. I looked at the room. Thank you for hearing me. My voice came out calmer than I felt. Good. What I'm about to show you is not a sibling disagreement about who said what first. It is a documented sequence of conception, development, access, appropriation, and reputational preemption. He did not only take a business concept, he built a story around me so that when I objected, I would sound less credible than he did before I even entered the room. Nobody interrupted. I handed the first pages down the line. This is a dated summary of the product as it existed in my notes 14 months before his first investor deck. The idea centered on a workflow platform for adult children coordinating care for aging parents. Medication logs, appointment visibility, document storage, task delegation, structured accountability. As in a conflict reduction layer for siblings trying to manage care from different cities. A man with rimless glasses looked up. That's very close to Care Ledger's positioning. It is Care Ledger's positioning, I said. Graham shifted. Dana lifted one finger in his direction without turning. He went still. I continued. The original concept came out of managing our father's recovery after his second stroke. I lived in Austin. Graham was in Dallas then. Our mother was bouncing between the house and the rehab center. Paperwork was everywhere. Medication changes, duplicate instructions, lost forms. Nobody sure who had spoken to which specialist. Everything felt fragmented and stupid in exactly the way family systems do when nobody is sleeping And everybody is pretending to be fine. I stopped. Then I let the next part land whole. So I built structure because staying in that chaos without structure was unbearable. I handed out a photograph from my old apartment. Cheap folding table, 2 monitors, sticky notes all over the wall, a lease packet visible in the corner, early wireframes on screen. "This is my South Lamar apartment," I said. "March 2024. My beta outline is on the monitor, metadata included in the packet." Donna flipped pages. The legal counsel started taking faster notes. Graham spoke anyway. "This proves she worked on something in the category. I never denied that." Dana turned to him. "You were told not to interrupt." He spread his hands. "Right, sorry." I handed over the next sheet. "This is the domain purchase confirmation for bridgeable.io. Paid from my debit card on April 11th, 2024. Yeah, this is a notarized copy of the email thread I sent to myself and a freelance designer on April 18th discussing user flows, especially the sibling handoff feature." I paused. The sibling handoff feature later became Care Ledger's headline innovation in his pitch. That changed the air. 3 people turned pages at the same time, because that was the real center of the product, not tracking, not storage, not reminders. Lots of tools track things. The important piece was the handoff architecture, the quiet little system that documented who saw what, who changed what, who confirmed what, and where responsibility actually lived. A structure built to lower duplication, lower resentment, and reduce the kind of blame loops families drown in when everybody is scared and tired. Families do not break because they lack information. But they break because information arrives through ego. That feature came straight out of a Costco parking lot where my mother cried because she and Graham were both sure the other had agreed to a rehab transport plan that neither had actually confirmed. I built it because ordinary stress turns siblings into litigators. I handed out the voice memo transcript next. In the original audio, you could hear my blinker clicking. I read aloud. "Need to build the handoff layer like emotional guardrails, not just tasks. Accountability without blame. Timestamp who saw what. Timestamp who changed meds. Families need proof they're not imagining each other." I let that sit. Not imagining each other. Dana lifted her eyes. The man with the glasses asked, "But do you have the audio?" "Yes." "Send it to Maya after the meeting." The junior associate nodded. Maya, younger than me, very alert. I kept going. Graham had access to these materials because I trusted him. He was my brother. He said he wanted to help me tighten the pitch, especially on the business side. He said I needed someone who could sell the room. I turned and looked at him. "You said I had product instinct and you had founder polish." For a second, the concern mask slipped. What flashed underneath was not innocence, not confusion, just irritation. I remembered exactly where he said it. 4th of July, our parents' place in Dallas. Dad had improved enough to sit outside for a while. Neighbors were setting off cheap fireworks before dark. Etta Graham was standing by the grill in a UT cap, holding a beer while classic rock played from a portable speaker. Graham. "This could actually be something, Ev." Me. "I know." Graham. "You need a front man." Me. "Why?" Graham. "Because investors don't buy ideas, they buy people." Me. "I am people." He laughed. Graham. "You know what I mean. I had laughed too. That memory still embarrassed me. A lot of betrayal is not missing the sign. It is seeing it and mistaking it for love. I moved to the shared document history. My account created the original file. His enters later in comment mode. You'll see he suggested language changes to the market slide and encouraged me to downplay the family origin because he thought it made the product sound too emotional. Dana asked, "Did you incorporate those changes?" "Some," I said. "Yeah, not all." Then I handed them the email that opened the room wider, from the designer. Subject line, "Founder version for tomorrow, forwarded by Graham. Need these cleaned up under my deck branding. Same flows, but sharper. Same flows. Sharper. There it was. One little theft sentence. Graham leaned forward. That was after we decided to collaborate. No, I said. That was after you decided to move me out of the center. Dana asked, was there ever a written agreement between the two of you? No. Graham jumped on it instantly. Exactly. There wasn't. We were talking, brainstorming, family conversations. She's framing normal collaboration as theft because she's upset that I moved faster. I laid down the next sheet. This is the first time he uses the word incubating in relation to the company, August 21st. As in a text to our cousin Rachel. Before that, every reference is to Evelyn's care app, Ev's workflow idea, or some version of that. I handed out the screenshots. Rachel had sent them to me in November from her driveway after 3 glasses of wine and a guilty phone call. Rachel, I thought you knew. Me. Knew what? Rachel, that he was pitching it as his. Me. Since when? Rachel. Since summer, maybe. I thought you were in it together. Me. We were not. Then came the part that mattered most. In one screenshot, Graham wrote, trying to keep Ev from getting too attached. She has a habit of turning brainstorms into ownership claims. Ownership claims. On my own work. The legal counsel asked, how did you first learn he had launched? I could have answered in one sentence. I didn't. Some moments need their full body. It was a Thursday, I said, late September. I was standing in line at H-E-B on South First buying ginger ale, printer paper, and cat food. My card reader froze, so I stepped aside to reload the payment app on my phone. Instagram opened in the browser instead. Someone had tagged him in a startup meetup post. He was on stage with a slide behind him. The slide said, Care Ledger. Under the logo were 3 feature bullets. 2 were mine almost word for word. The third was a stripped-down version of the handoff architecture. I could still feel the fluorescent glare of that checkout lane, the conveyor belt, the gum rack, the sticky basket handle, the cashier asking paper or digital receipt while all the blood in my body rushed into my ears. I had looked at the screen and whispered, no. Then I called him in the parking lot. Yeah, he picked up on the 4th ring. Graham. Hey, me. What is Care Ledger? Pause. Graham. I was going to call you. Me. What is Care Ledger? Graham. It's the evolved version. Me. Of my idea. Graham. Of our conversations. Me. You are on stage pitching my work. Graham. Lower your voice. Me. I'm in a parking lot. Graham. You're making this bigger than it is. That sentence stayed in my head for months, not because it was original, because it was family scripture. At 12, when I caught him pawning my bike to cover a poker debt, I was making it bigger than it was. At 19, when I told our parents he had used my social security number on an old gym membership to dodge a collections hit, I was being dramatic. At 24, when he borrowed my freelance client intro and landed himself a contract undercutting my rate. Oh, I was too sensitive. A man can keep escalating if a family keeps renaming the damage. I handed over the LLC record. Care Ledger Health Systems, LLC, filed September 4th, 2024 in Travis County. Filing record in your packet. I also included the preservation notice I filed once I realized the product had moved into active diligence. That got their full attention. Maya looked up sharply. Dana said, You filed preservation before this meeting? Yes. Graham laughed under his breath. Jesus, Evelyn. I looked at him. No. Jesus was the part where you told people I was mentally unstable. That was the first time I said it plainly. No shaking, no tears, just clean. The room changed temperature. Rimless glasses put down his pen. The counsel asked, Explain that. I handed out the next set. Texts, emails, Slack export. Founder dinner messages. When he realized I was objecting, I said, he did not only deny authorship, he built insulation. He told people I was burned out. Then he escalated. He began using private family narratives to suggest I was not reliable. I pointed to one message. Page 18. He writes to an angel investor. Heads up if my sister reaches out. She's had a rough year and sometimes fixates when stressed. We've had to support her through some episodes before. Dana turned to Graham. His mouth opened. She said, "Not yet." My chest was tight now, but my voice stayed steady. I had no episodes. I had debt, grief, freelance instability, and one panic attack in a CVS parking lot after opening a hospital bill I could not afford. He turned ordinary strain into a character witness against me. Another page. Saw a text to our mother. "Please don't feed this. She gets obsessive. We need to stay consistent. Stay consistent." Like I was weather, like they were managing flood warnings. Then the Slack export. By then he had a tiny internal team, 2 contractors, 1 operations consultant. In a private message to the ops consultant he wrote, "If my sister pops up, route her to me. She's not well and has attachment issues around the concept." Attachment issues around the concept. There are sentences so insulting they almost become elegant. I watched the room read. No pity, thank God. Pity is another form of handling. I had enough of that. Dana asked, "Did anyone here receive communications of this kind directly?" A younger partner named Neil shifted in his chair. "Yes," he said. "Not as explicit, not as... but I was told there might be a family member with boundary concerns." Boundary concerns, of course. Women are always one adjective away from becoming a compliance issue. I said, "That's an interesting phrase for the original creator of the product." Graham's face had started to flush. "Can I respond now?" Dana nodded. He exhaled like a patient man dragged unfairly into inconvenience. "Look," he said, "Evelyn did work in this space first. I've acknowledged that. But ideas evolve, markets evolve, execution matters. I brought in capital strategy, customer discovery, go-to-market structure, and actual momentum. She was in an early concept loop. I turned it into a company." He turned slightly toward the room, opening his shoulders like this was now a reasonable discussion among professionals. She's selectively presenting old materials as if they prove sole ownership. They don't. We had dozens of conversations, calls, family dinners, whiteboard sessions. This grew collaboratively. She wanted control, yes, but wanting control isn't the same thing as having a company. Then he shifted where he always shifted when facts started getting sharp, into my mind. And with respect, she has been under severe stress. She lost a major client. Our father's health crisis hit her hard. There have been intense moments. That doesn't make her wrong to feel hurt. But it does affect interpretation. Interpretation. He always loved words that made harm sound academic. Dana asked, "Did you tell people she was unstable?" I said she was stressed. "Did you tell them she had episodes?" Half a beat too long. "I may have used shorthand in private." The counsel asked, "For what purpose?" "To prepare people if she reached out in an agitated state." There it was, a confession hiding inside management language. Donna asked, "Agitated based on what?" "Based on how she approached me." I opened the final section of the portfolio. "That part is easy." I handed out screenshots of our direct exchanges after I found the launch post. No screaming, no threats, no all-caps breakdown. Furious, yes, but precise. Dates, files, requests for explanation, requests for document access, a written demand that shared materials be preserved, a request that he stop presenting my work until authorship was resolved. His replies were the real story. "You're confused. You are not remembering this accurately. But please stop creating a record that distorts what happened. I'm trying to protect you from saying things you cannot take back. Mom is worried about you. When facts threaten manipulative people, they stop arguing details and start arguing your mind." I didn't say that out loud. I just felt it pass through me like steel. Dana took a breath. Why tell investors in advance that your sister might be unreliable if you believe this was ordinary collaboration? Because she was escalating. With proof? With intensity. Neil looked down at his notes. The counsel asked, "Did you ever offer her equity?" Graham blinked once. That was under discussion. I slid another page toward them. A text from him to me, 3 weeks after launch. "You should be grateful I'm willing to mention you at all. Most founders would cut dead weight earlier." Silence. He tried to get in front of it. "I was angry when I wrote that." Dana said, "I assume so." Then she looked at me. "What outcome are you seeking today?" There are questions like that which tell you exactly what power expects from hurt people. A breakdown, a revenge speech, a plea, a settlement ask. I answered the only way that felt true. Sequence restored, misrepresentations corrected, my authorship recognized in writing, and a clear record that he used personal reputation sabotage to secure leverage in diligence. The counsel nodded once. Practical, actionable, difficult to wave away. Dana folded her hands. "I want to understand one thing more clearly. The feature you describe as central to the company's differentiation, the handoff layer. Walk us through it without notes." Graham spoke immediately. "Of course." She lifted a finger. "Evelyn." I could have talked about that feature half asleep, because I had. Walking Ladybird Lake at dusk, standing in the shower, lying on my couch, staring at the ceiling while my cat slept on my ankle. I had built it from lived tension, not market theater. So I explained. Role hierarchy, temporary proxies, consent-based document visibility, confirmation trails, override flags, notification phrasing designed to lower blame. The difference between medical urgency and emotional urgency inside sibling coordination. What happens when one adult child is carrying most of the invisible labor and another only drops in for dramatic weekends and opinions? The room got quieter as I spoke. By the third minute, no one was looking at Graham. By the fifth, Neil asked how I would handle Medicare document uploads for users with low scanning literacy. I answered. Maya asked whether there was room for an attorney access lane around probate or guardianship cases. "Yes," I said, "but only secondarily. The core user is not a lawyer, it's an overwhelmed family. If you design from the legal edge first, you'll lose ordinary people." Dana's mouth shifted slightly, not a smile. Recognition. Then she turned to Graham. "Your turn, same question. Walk us through the design logic behind the handoff layer." He started strong. Too strong. The way people do when they know the vocabulary but not the lived reason under it. He said friction reduction, accountability architecture, asynchronous family collaboration. But when Dana pressed him on one notification branch, he contradicted his own deck. When Neil asked about rotating permissions between distant siblings, he confused viewer access with care proxy logic. When Maya asked about emotional wording, he said, "We can A/B test that later." Can. Later. You can hear the difference between owner and borrower eventually. Dana looked at him for a long second. "You do not sound like the original source of this." I will never forget his face in that moment. It wasn't total collapse. Not yet. Just a flicker. A man realizing the floor beneath him had become less loyal. He pivoted to charm. "Dana, with respect, founders build from teams all the time. No company emerges from pure individual isolation. My sister is talented, I've always said that. But she's retroactively rewriting contribution because she feels sidelined." I reached into the portfolio one last time. "There's one more thing." I had saved it on purpose. Not for drama, for order. I placed a printed transcript in front of them and hit play on my phone. Low, scratchy audio. recorded accidentally by a voice memo app I forgot was still running after a July brainstorm at my apartment. Ice clinking in glasses, the buzz of my window a sea, a dog barking outside, then our voices. Me. The whole value is that families stop fighting over who did what. Graham. Right. Me. Not just tasks, recorded handoffs, that's the moat. Graham. That's the part investors will love. Me. If they love it because it's human. Graham. We should maybe clean up your framing. My framing is the product. Graham. I know. And I know. I'm saying let me package it. Pause. Then him again. Graham. Honestly, you make the thing. I'll make people believe in it. I stopped the audio. Nobody moved for a second. Because evidence changes temperature. Dana said, send that file too. Graham stared at the table. The silver hoops at Dana's ears caught light when she turned to him. Did you represent to us that the handoff architecture originated from your founder research? He swallowed. I represented that the product direction was mine. That is not the question. He looked up. I may have compressed the story. Compressed the story. Another pretty phrase. Dana said, you mean falsified founder origin? His jaw set. It's more complicated than that. The counsel spoke in a colder voice now. It usually isn't. Outside the glass wall, his staff moved past, pretending not to notice. A printer whirred somewhere in the hallway. My palms were dry. My back felt almost weightless. For months I had imagined this scene as fire. It was not fire. It was accounting. That was better. Neil rubbed his chin. I want to ask about reputational risk. Why not disclose that significant conception came from a sibling collaborator and negotiate from there? Graham answered too fast. Because she was never formal. I said, because you wanted soul founder mythology. He shot me a look. You are trying to destroy something that could help people. I held his gaze. You destroyed it the minute you made lying part of the architecture. That line stayed with me later. Not because it was clever, because it was true. A company built on stolen trust always leaks. There were more questions after that. Direct platform access, contact information for Luis and Rachel, metadata transfer, document preservation language, timeline requests. I had all of it, tabbed, printed, mirrored on a drive. Prepared women are often called intimidating by men who expected grief to keep them small. I did not mind that thought. Eventually, Graham stopped interrupting. The anger went quiet inside him. That was how I knew he understood what was happening. Not total ruin, not instantly. Men like him do not evaporate in one room. But the central thing he needed had cracked. Belief. Without belief, charisma becomes posture. Dana closed the folder. Here's what happens next. Diligence is paused pending review. We need source verification on all early materials, direct access to metadata, and written chronology from both parties by end of week. Graham, you are not to delete, alter, or move documents. Our counsel will send preservation language this afternoon. Evelyn, send Maya the full archive within 2 hours. That was when he snapped. This is insane. No one answered. He looked around the room. Are we seriously blowing up a real company because my sister is vindictive? Dana's expression did not move. We are reassessing a company because you appear to have misrepresented authorship and attempted to prejudice witnesses against a claimant in advance. He gave one short, ugly laugh. You don't understand family dynamics. Neil said, I understand diligence contamination. That one hit deep. Graham stood too fast. His chair scraped hard against the floor. I built this, I said. It's around my skeleton. He turned toward me fully then, and for one raw second the polished founder disappeared. What looked back at me was the brother from every kitchen argument, every petty theft, every half-confession he thought he could outcharm. This, he said quietly, is why people back away from you. You always have to make everything yours. There are insults that stop hurting once you understand their assignment. I looked right at him. I learned that from watching you. Dana told him to sit. He did. Badly. The meeting ended 10 minutes later in logistics and follow-up language and dry professional sentences meant to dismantle myth without ever admitting they were doing it. I packed my papers carefully. Not because I was fragile, because after months of being turned into a rumor, touching proof felt grounding. Out in the hallway, Graham caught my elbow. Not hard, enough. I pulled free immediately. "Do not touch me." He lowered his voice. "You have no idea what you just did." "I fixed the order." He stared at me like I had become someone unfamiliar. Maybe I had. He stepped closer again, eyes bright with that furious, wounded narcissism that always used to turn the room in his favor. "Mom is going to lose it." That was his first instinct. Not accountability. Not grief. Collateral family management. I said, "Then maybe stop using her as a shield. You've always wanted to humiliate me." "No, I wanted you to stop rewriting me." Then I walked away before he could answer. The elevator ride down felt oddly quiet. A woman in a cream suit got on at 9. A man carrying blueprints checked his phone beside me. The city kept going. Well, because of course it did. Exposure is dramatic inside your body and administrative everywhere else. By the time I reached the garage, my legs were shaking hard enough that I had to lean against the car. Oil. Sun-heated cement. A radio somewhere playing old country from a maintenance cart. I put the portfolio on the roof, bent forward, and let one full breath leave me. Then my phone started exploding. Mom, Rachel, Aunt Denise. 2 unknown numbers that were either lawyers or family friends drafted into concern. I got inside the car and locked the doors before calling Mom back. She answered on the first ring. "What did you do?" I told the truth. "Graham said you ambushed an investor meeting. He stole my company idea and told them I was unstable." No, not today." Silence, then a brittle exhale. You should have handled this privately." "He handled it privately," I said. "For months. That was the problem." "He says you're twisting collaborative conversations." "He says a lot." "Honey, families say ugly things under pressure." "He said them to investors, not over Thanksgiving wine." That shut her up for half a beat. I kept going. "He told them I had episodes, Mom. He told them not to trust me. He told you to stay consistent." She didn't answer. That hurt more than denial would have. I looked through the windshield at a strip of Texas sky between concrete beams. "Did you know he used that phrase?" Her voice came back smaller. "He said you were overwhelmed." "Did you repeat it?" Pause. "Not like that." Not like that. The refuge of people who cannot bear the exact shape of their part. I closed my eyes. A betrayal rarely arrives alone. It drags softer cowards behind it. Mom started crying quietly. I stayed still. That was part of the exhaustion. I loved her. She was not cruel by design. She was tired, conflict avoidant, loyal to whichever person in front of her looked most wounded. Graham knew how to look wounded better than anyone I had ever met. "I didn't know it was this serious," she whispered. "It was serious when he launched. He said you were jealous. Of my own work? He said you were scared he'd succeed where you couldn't." I laughed once, short, mean. Interesting diagnosis from a man wearing my research. She said my name like a plea. I said, "I have to go." Then she said the sentence that lived at the center of my family's whole disease. "Please don't make the family pick sides." There it was. Not tell the truth, not repair the harm, just keep the table looking whole. I answered before I could soften it. "He made a side when he built a company on my back." Then I hung up. I sat there for another minute staring at my hands, My nails had left half moons in my palm. My watch said 11:42. My stomach finally realized it was empty. I drove to a taco place on East Cesar Chavez and ate 2 bites before Maya emailed the upload link. By 1:15, I had sent the full archive. By 2:40, Luis had replied confirming in writing that the first visual system and product flows were mine, and that Graham came later as, quote, a family advisor type. By 3:10, Rachel sent a screenshot I had never seen before. Graham texting her the week before launch. Need to keep Ev from poisoning the story. She confuses making with owning. Well, that one nearly made me drop my phone. Not because it was worse than the others. Because it was so pure. No smoothing, no concern language, no performance. Just truth in private clothes. He knew exactly what he had done. That evening, I walked into my apartment and noticed stupid little things with painful clarity. The dish towel on the oven handle. The unopened DMV renewal notice on the counter. A pair of sneakers by the door. A Trader Joe's peony browning in a vase. My life looked so ordinary, it felt insulting. Trauma always wants a better set. Instead, it happens near laundry. I fed the cat, changed into old sweatpants, and sat cross-legged on the rug with my laptop open. A neighbor was arguing outside about HOA rules and balcony planters. Somewhere far off, a siren dragged through the air. But the city kept offering tiny reminders that everybody thought their emergency was the main one. Mine had finally made paperwork. At 6:13 p.m., Dana emailed. Thank you for presenting clearly today. We are conducting an immediate review. Please preserve all materials and refrain from direct contact with anyone on Graham's team except through counsel where appropriate. Clearly. That word mattered more than I expected. For months, I had been described as intense, upset, fixated. The same woman becomes clear the second a room has reason to respect her evidence. The next 3 days moved like a legal storm. Archer Ridge's counsel requested platform access logs. Graham's contractor replied through an attorney. Luis signed an affidavit. Rachel agreed to a statement after making me promise I would never quote her at Christmas. Neil called once to clarify a date discrepancy and ended the call by saying, I wish this situation were less common. Less common, not rare. That made me sicker than almost anything else. Meanwhile, my family turned into a group chat collapse with casseroles and denial attached. Aunt Denise sent prayer hands. Cousin Mark wrote, Y'all need mediation. Mom alternated between silence and little peacekeeping messages like, Can we all breathe? And no more emails tonight, please. Dad, still weaker from rehab and never good with phones, left me a voicemail that just said, I love you, Peanut. I don't know what's happening. That one made me cry. I didn't call Graham. He called me 6 times. I let all of it go to voicemail until the 4th message. His voice was low and furious. You think because you got one meeting you've won something. You haven't. Investors care about outcomes, not your feelings. On the 5th voicemail, he changed tone. Ev, please, this has gone too far. You're hurting Mom. By the 6th, he was back to contempt. You always do this. You can never stand not being the center. That was almost funny. I had spent most of my life avoiding the center because in my family, the center was where blame gathered. Graham loved the center because the center came with witnesses. Sunday night, Rachel came over with Thai food and 2 tiny cheesecakes from Whole Foods, leggings, no makeup, guilty face. I'm sorry, she said before she sat down. I believed her. That made it harder. You knew? Not all of it, but enough. She looked at her hands. I thought it was bad. I didn't think it was nuclear. It was nuclear when he started telling people I was losing it. She flinched. I know. We let that sit between us. Then she told me something I hadn't known. At a founder mixer in late October, one of Archer Ridge's associates had asked Graham how he got interested in elder care coordination. He gave this polished answer, Rachel said, about demographic trends and fragmented systems, and seeing families struggle in the abstract after some friend's parent had a fall. In the abstract. That detail enraged me in a different way. Because theft is one thing, bleaching the human reason out of it is another. I asked, "Why tell me now?" She met my eyes. "Because I watched him do to you what he used to do in little ways when you were kids. Take your idea, say it louder. Then make you sound dramatic for objecting." The memory came instantly. I was 9. I made up a scavenger game for a neighborhood barbecue. 5 minutes later, he announced it as if it were his, and the adults clapped because he had the louder voice. When I protested, he put an arm around me and grinned. "We thought of it together, Evie." Everybody smiled because he made it sound sweet. It is dangerous to grow up around stolen credit that gets called charm. Rachel stayed until almost midnight. Before she left, she looked around my apartment at the legal folders, coffee cups, and sticky tabs and said, "He still thinks he can talk his way out of this." I know. Can he? I looked out at the blue-lit skyline. Not if the people in charge care about sequence more than polish. She nodded slowly and left. After the door shut, I stood in the kitchen washing 2 forks and a takeout plate. Water, soap, ceramic. The body likes tasks when the mind is under attack. 3 days later, Archer Ridge requested a second meeting, smaller this time. Dana, counsel, Maya, me, different room, walnut table, 2 abstract prints. A vent humming too loudly. Dana got straight to it. We reviewed metadata, third-party statements, and the materials presented in diligence. We also compared your archive against the founder narrative represented to us. She folded her hands. The discrepancies are significant. I said nothing. I wanted the sentence whole. "We are withdrawing from the process," she said. "Not pausing, withdrawing. There may be additional legal exposure depending on what other representations were made elsewhere. We can't advise you directly beyond recommending private counsel if you choose to pursue ownership claims." My lungs loosened slowly. She continued, "We also intend to issue written clarification for our internal records that your contribution to the product's conception and key feature architecture was substantial and appears foundational." Foundational. That word hit me harder than any victory speech could have. Because it named the actual theft. Not just idea. Foundation. Maya slid a redacted memo toward me. Professional. Dry. Beautiful. It did not say my brother was a monster. It did not need to. Then Dana surprised me. "I want to tell you something candidly," she said. "I noticed inconsistencies in his origin story the first time he pitched. Not enough to act on, enough to wonder. The emotional intelligence embedded in the product did not match the way he talked about families." I looked at her. She said, "He described pain like someone who had read about it, not carried it." That nearly undid me. Because that was the difference. Borrowers can copy language. They struggle with weight. Dana said, "You were right to come in prepared." I breathed once before answering. "Thank you for listening." She nodded. "People heard you because you gave them a structure they could not avoid." By the time I got back to my car, the news had already started moving through the little invisible network that carries startup gossip faster than truth ever travels in families. A founder I barely knew texted, "Heard there's trouble around Care Ledger diligence, you okay?" A former client emailed asking if I wanted coffee. Oh, someone from a health tech Slack group I hadn't opened in months wrote, "If you re-enter the space under your own name, call me." The world did not crown me. That is not how life works. But the current had shifted. Graham was no longer the only narrator in circulation. He called me that night from a new number. I answered before I could stop myself. He didn't bother easing in. "You really think this ends well for you?" It already ended better than it was going. "You cost me 6 months. You stole 2 years. You are so self-righteous. And you are so practiced." He breathed hard once into the line. "You could have had a role." I laughed. "A role? In my own idea?" You don't know how hard I worked. I know exactly how hard you worked. I just know what you worked on. Silence. Then the old soft voice. Ev. Hi, come on. We can settle this. There it was. Lawyer language. Finally. By settle, I said. Do you mean admit in writing that the concept and key feature architecture were mine? Silence again. Then, you always need a dramatic confession scene. No, I said. I need sequence. He swore quietly. Then he said the sentence that locked everything into place. You were never going to get this funded alone. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. It didn't matter, because it revealed the engine underneath everything. He thought capability gave him moral title. He thought polish could outrank origin. He thought being easier for investors to imagine in charge made him the rightful owner of whatever he could carry off from me. I said, that belief is why you're done. Then I hung up. A week later, Gus' mom asked us both to come to Dallas for Sunday dinner. I almost refused. Then I thought about every family table where truth gets softened into casserole and politeness, and decided I was tired of making denial comfortable. Their house smelled like roast chicken, Tide detergent, and that cedar candle Mom always burned in the fall. Dad sat in his recliner with a UT blanket over his knees. The TV was muted. Christmas card catalogs were stacked by the lamp, even though it was only October. Graham was already there in a navy sweater, helping Mom plate salad like a visiting politician. He looked thinner, angrier too. Mom kept saying, "Let's all stay calm," before anyone had raised their voice. The table was set with the wedding china she only used on holidays and emotionally loaded Sundays. We ate for 12 minutes like strangers at a church auction, then Dad cleared his throat. "Can somebody tell me," he said, "what exactly happened without making me decode it from your mother's face?" Nobody moved. I set down my fork. Graham used my product work and pitched it as his own company. When I objected, he told investors and some family I was unreliable so they would not believe me. I brought proof. They pulled out. Mom whispered, "Evelyn." Dad turned to Graham. "That true?" "Not like that." Dad looked exhausted. "How then?" Graham launched into the usual gloss: collaboration, stress, different perceptions, family hurt, acceleration, misunderstanding. I didn't even watch him. I watched Dad's face. The same face that had believed Graham when he said he hadn't taken cash from Mom's purse, even with the bills folded in his jacket pocket. The same face that always wanted peace more than accuracy. Then I took the folder out of my bag and placed it beside Dad's plate. I hadn't planned to. Then I did. Timeline, texts, transcript, basics. The least a father owed his daughter was sequence. Dad put on his glasses and started reading. No one spoke for a full minute. Mom's fork clicked once against the plate. Then Dad looked up at Graham. "Why would you tell people she was unstable?" Graham's mouth tightened. "I said she was overwhelmed." Dad kept looking at him. "Why?" "Because she was blowing things up." Dad tapped the folder once. "Looks like you blew it up first." I stared at him, stared at what my father had never once in our entire adult lives said anything that clean in conflict. Mom started crying. "I don't want this family destroyed over a company." I looked at her. "It wasn't destroyed over a company." Dad nodded slowly, still looking at the papers. "It was damaged long before that." That line opened something in the house. Not healing, not yet, but air. Graham pushed back his chair. "This is unbelievable." Dad said, "Sit down." And for one astonishing second, Graham did. Not because he respected me, because he still respected authority if he thought it might shame him. Dad moved through the folder slowly. When he reached the transcript, his face changed. He looked at Graham. "You really said, 'I'll make people believe in it'?" Graham said nothing. Dad took off his glasses. You know what your problem is," Mom whispered. "Frank, please." He ignored her. "You have always thought packaging counts more than labor." Graham stood. "I'm not doing this." He headed for the hallway. Mom called after him. He kept walking. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the glass in the china cabinet. Mom stared at the table like it had betrayed her personally. I expected relief. What came first was grief. Not because I doubted myself, because some hopes only die after proof. Being right can still break your heart. Dad rubbed his forehead. I should have listened sooner. I looked at him. Really looked. Age had settled all over him in ways I had not wanted to notice. You were sick, I said. He shook his head. That's not the whole answer. No, it wasn't. But for that night, it was enough. And I drove back to Austin under a black sky cut with highway lights and didn't turn on music. The road noise did the work. Bucky's signs glowed in the distance. Gas stations floated past like artificial islands. Around Waco, I pulled over, bought a bottle of water and peanut M&Ms, and stood under fluorescent lights reading a tabloid cover about celebrity divorce while my real life recalibrated. 2 days later, Graham's lawyer sent an email proposing mutual non-disparagement and future participation options. I forwarded it to my lawyer with one line. Not without written admission of origin, misuse of reputation, and compensation discussion. By then, yes, I had a lawyer. Not because I wanted war. Because clean endings require paperwork. Negotiations took 3 weeks, drafts, red lines. Absurd attempts to make me acknowledge joint developmental ambiguity, efforts to recast his lies as private concerns shared in good faith. I rejected all of it. Meanwhile, the market did what markets do to shaky narratives. Word spread, not everywhere, not dramatically, just enough. Another fund stepped back. A pilot conversation stalled. One contractor quit. Luis told me later, Graham tried reframing the whole thing as family conflict magnified by emotional context, and it went over about as well as you would expect. In November, we landed on a settlement. No fairy tale, no cinematic check, no violin music. But it mattered. Formal written acknowledgement that I originated the foundational concept and primary handoff feature architecture, financial compensation, restrictions on future founder origin representations. At documented correction language sent to specified diligence contacts, release conditions that did not erase sequence. I read the final version sitting at my kitchen counter in socks with a grocery list beside me. Avocados, dish soap, cat litter, settlement language reclaiming my authorship. Life is obscene that way. When I signed, my hand stayed steady. Afterward, I went walking at Ladybird Lake. Brown gold water in late afternoon light, joggers passing in bright shoes, a child dropping half a pretzel to a duck, a guitarist under the bridge playing something soft and familiar that I couldn't quite place. For the first time in months, my mind was not using all its strength to hold reality in place. That freed up grief, real grief. For the brother I had. For the family version I kept trying to resurrect by explaining better. I'm softer, cleaner. For all the years I spent believing that if I presented lovingly enough, no one would choose the easier lie over the harder truth. I stopped at the railing and looked at the skyline. Austin still glittered like opportunity mixed with performance. But it no longer felt like someone else's stage. It felt survivable. A week later, Maya emailed me privately. Not on behalf of Archer Ridge, just herself. If you ever rebuild independently, I'd be interested in seeing it. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and did nothing for 2 days. I slept, cleaned my apartment, renewed my registration, returned a package, bought new mixing bowls because one had cracked in the dishwasher, and somehow that felt symbolic enough to deserve replacement. And I let my nervous system understand that the war had changed shape. Then I opened a blank document. Not care ledger, never that. A new name, a new structure, still mine. I did not rebuild out of revenge alone. Revenge can start a fire. It cannot be the whole fuel source. I rebuilt because being erased clarified something brutal and useful. My work was real even when the wrong people called me difficult. My memory was intact even when a polished man narrated me as unstable. The part of me he tried hardest to discredit was the exact part that saved me. That matters, especially for women raised inside families where the loudest version usually wins. By January, I had a small advisory circle. One former client, one health tech operator. Maya, quietly. Rachel, guiltily, with spreadsheets sometimes. But Dad even forwarded me an article from the paper with the subject line, "For your research, Peanut," and that nearly broke me in the best possible way. Mom and I became quieter with each other. Not fixed, just quieter. Sometimes repair begins as accuracy with less decoration. As for Graham, he sent one email in February. No greeting, just one sentence. "I hope being right was worth losing your brother." I read it twice. Then I archived it. Because the sentence assumed I had done the losing. He had lost the moment he decided my mind was the price of his image. What I know now is this. The most dangerous theft is the one that comes with a new story about your sanity. And this. Proof is not cold. Sometimes proof is the most merciful thing in the room. And this too. Some people do not fear hurting you. They fear being seen doing it. So when people ask how it ended, I do not say I destroyed him. I say I made the sequence visible. Investors heard my side. The narrative shifted. His credibility cracked where it mattered. My authorship stopped being a private ache and became part of the official record. My family could no longer hide inside vague little words like collaboration and stress. Even my mother eventually said the sentence I had needed from the beginning. Not in a conference room, not in a dramatic final showdown, in her kitchen, holding a dish towel, staring at the sink. She said, "He took what was yours." It did not fix the years before it. It did not give me back the months of being spoken about like a weather system. But it was enough for truth. And when I think back to that morning outside the glass-walled office, I do not remember fear first. I remember order, the portfolio on the passenger seat, his texts stacking up, the white lobby, the polished floor, the founders moving around in clothes expensive enough to pass for confidence. And I remember this most clearly of all. I was never there to beg. I was there to put my life back in the right sequence.